in as a young child, but developed terrible Parkinson's disease. And I remember how terrible. She was so rigid and stiff. In fact, the only thing I really remember about her. But my mother had a loving family, including Aunt Becky from Hartford, Aunt Bessie from St. Louis, and her Aunt Marcy. And I truly believe that when my mother would tell me Aunt Bessie from St. Louis was on the telephone, or Aunt Becky from Hartford was on the phone, that was truly their last name, from Hartford, from St. Louis. I never knew what their last name was. My grandfather, Jacob Dolges, for whom Jake, my oldest son, is named after, was a great mathematician, as you heard, and an Orthodox rabbi, scholar, contributed much to Jewish literature, and was good friends with Mordecai Kaplan, who you know, is the founder of Reconstruction. My grandfather passed on the math gene to my mother and her children and her great-grandchildren, and I'm sure her great-grandchildren. My mother skipped many grades. I won the math medal my senior in high school with the help of my Uncle Victor. One weekend I went to his house. He taught me everything I needed to know. I got 100 credits, and then as a trip we would all go out to Coney Island with Billy and Mark, and it was really lots of fun going to visit my Uncle Victor and Aunt Ruthie. Unfortunately, my Aunt Ruthie is not here, but I always remember one thing she would say is that when she would call my mother from Brooklyn, and my mom was thinking everything was long distance if you're not right in the same town, and in those days it was long distance. My Aunt Ruthie would say, "It's my nickel." Yeah. So that's how much, it's my nickel for bankers. I wanted to tell a story about my Aunt Ruthie, but that Jake reminded me of, about going to the Newark Drive-In, but that's a different story. Different time. I'm trying to explain what the Dolgen gene is. It's sort of like the Goldstein gene, as Bert and Harriet would know well. But there are a lot of egocentricity with it. It's sort of like Einstein and Churchill partying with John Daly of The Daily Show and eating a rat while watching South Park. Because there's always an intelligent conversation going on, very opinionated people, having fun, always able to eat regardless of circumstances. And I mean, always able to eat regardless of circumstances. My mother is the embodiment and the matriarch of our family. My mother never forgets a birthday. She never gives an opinion. She goes to plays at the Shakespeare Theater. She goes to movies, goes to concerts and lectures, plays bridge, writes a column. And she's a movie critic. And in fact, she gives her opinion to the movie critic at the Star Legend when he's wrong. She has fun with all her activities. She all has fun. A lover. Growing up with my mother was very easy, as I imagine it was for most of you. Whatever I did was perfect. I'm the most handsome man, the most brilliant person, the best father, the best athlete, always right in everything I say or do. But that's probably the same true of you.
Oh, sure.
Some stories, quick stories about my mom. I became 17. My mother took me to get my driver's license. On the way home from my driver's license, I got picked up for speeding. My mother paid the ticket. My father never to this day ever found out. I had a ride, I was playing basketball, and probably messing around at college. And it was, I had to write an essay with Roger Bacon's essays. I said to my mom and dad, could you help me write out the essay? They wrote out a paper and they sent it to the wrong town, Washington, New Jersey. I was staying in Washington, Pennsylvania. So that Saturday, before the paper was due on Monday, my mother flies out to Pittsburgh, meets me at the airport. 2 hours later, she comes back. I have my paper. I handed it on Monday, and I get an A on it. Meanwhile, my mother flies back to New York, meets my father at the theater at 8 o'clock that evening, and my father says to her, Marcy, where were you today? She says, you wouldn't believe it. My sisters really have not understood how my mother grew up. We were sitting at dinner about 10, 15 years ago at my mother's table, and I said to my mother, Mom, I'm thirsty. And my mother said, Sherry, get him something to drink. So Sherry said something like, he's old enough, he can get himself something to drink. And my mother said, get him something to drink, he works very hard. I once also took a trip to Montreal. I graduated high school, stole the car. We were going to Atlantic City, but my two friends and I decided to go visit my girlfriend in Montreal, Janet Beecher. And on the way to Montreal, the three of us had $35 and one credit card on the way to Montreal. I get stopped at the in Plattsburgh for speeding, for going 90 miles an hour in a 60 mile an hour zone, 90 miles an hour in a 70 mile an hour zone. My lights were on, and I didn't have the registration to the car. My father, they call my father and tell him what happened, what the problem is, and my father says, send them right home. So we felt that we had, we yelled it anyway. We went up to Montreal, and eventually we came back, and we had to be at Susan and Jerry's. They were having a dance recital in North Arlington. And my father said through the telephone, you better be there. So we were there at 8 o'clock. It had just started. My father sees me, and he looks at me and says, get inside with your mother. As I walk inside, my mother goes, Stephen, sweetheart, how are you? I love you. It upset my father because my father said that your mother was upsetting me. As soon as she sees you, I forget everything. Okay, she made her daughters always look good. When they went out, they needed to wear lipstick. Mom is very proud of their accomplishments, and we know how bright and sweet they are. And of course, Doron is the greatest. And in fact, Elaine even thought Doron was the best husband in the world. In fact, when I think about it, I really hate Doron. My mother's a wonderful and kind person who put family above everything else. She made sure her family was always together as much as possible. Dinners at the club, calling her children and grandchildren every Shabbat. She's taught me much, never to stand on ceremony. If you want me, you can get me. Always keep learning. Don't let disability stop you. Paying bills on time. Keeping active. Now, how do you make a synopsis of 25 years of age into a small speech? You don't. Except, thank you for being an extraordinary mother, a teacher, someone who we can all look up to, and led an extraordinary life. Thank you for teaching us about life, which for all of us has been the most precious one.
I have to turn it off. Yeah, fun.
Remember movie of it. Movie?